What's happening, everybody? On today's show, the latest news from the transfer portal, draft declarations, a Kentucky DB and Ole Miss wide receiver are heading back for another season, while a key linebacker goes from Arkansas to Ole Miss. LSU quarterback Jayden Daniels takes home the Heisman Trophy. We'll catch up with Caroline Fenton of Locked On LSU as she was up in New York covering the ceremony. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use our code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy over at PrizePicks. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We got plenty to discuss, so let's dive into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we start with Jayden Daniels as the LSU quarterback took home the Heisman Trophy on Saturday, becoming just the third LSU player ever to take home the Heisman Trophy, joining the likes of Billy Cannon and Joe Burrow. Jayden Daniels is the fourth SEC player in the last 5 seasons to win the Heisman, joining Bryce Young, Devontae Smith, and Joe Burrow. The vote was a little bit closer than some thought, edged out Michael Penix Jr. of Washington. It was the closest vote since 2018 when Kyler Murray won it over Tua. And our buddy Cole Kublick doing a little homework. He put out there that Jayden Daniels becomes the 16th winner of the Heisman Trophy from the SEC. That breaks a tie with the Big Ten, who has had 15 overall winners. Since 2006, the SEC, they've produced a total of 9 Heisman winners. In that same time, the Big Ten has produced just 1. Jayden Daniels, very accomplished, very great season. Took home the Walter Camp Award, the Davey O'Brien Award, the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. He was named SEC Offensive Player of the Year and the AP College Football Player of the Year. Alabama's Jalen Milroe did finish 6th in this year's Heisman vote, and that led to the topic, who will be the preseason favorite for next season? Well, the very early list includes several names from the SEC, including Jalen Milroe making this list. Quinn Ewers at Texas, keep in mind they will be in the SEC next year. Carson Beck at Georgia, Jackson Dart at Ole Miss, and Luther Burden at Mizzou. So Jayden Daniels takes home the Heisman. A few other postseason awards were handed out Friday evening. Georgia wide receiver Ladd McConkey took home the Warfel Trophy. That is considered college football's premier award for community service. Georgia tight end Brock Bowers made history, repeating as the as the Mackey Award winner. That goes to the nation's top tight end. It's the first time a player has won it twice. So congrats to Brock. If you missed it, we had him on the show last week. Check that out. Missouri running back Cody Schrader took home the Burlsworth Trophy, going to the best player who began their career as a walk-on. And LSU wide receiver Malik Neighbors came up 1 vote shy of the Biletnikoff Award. That went to Marvin Harrison Jr. as the nation's best wide receiver, though Neighbors led the country in receiving yards and was better than Marvin Harrison in several categories. But, name recognition wins out sometimes. So, but congrats to all the big-name players who took home big-time awards. All right, let's get to some of the guys going pro. A couple of names. Georgia center Sedrick Van Pran appears to be entering the NFL draft. He's not made an official announcement yet, but the Senior Bowl revealed that the Georgia center accepted his invitation to participate in the Senior Bowl coming up in a couple weeks. His decision, not really a surprise. He had the option to go pro last year, but came back to Georgia for another season. He was listed as a 4th-year junior on Georgia's 2023 roster. Over the last 3 seasons, he has started 43 games at center, was a first-team All-SEC selection heading into this year. So an accomplished career for Sedrick Van Pran. Good luck to him moving forward. Now, over in Aggie land, wide receiver Ainias Smith, he has played his last game for A&M. He announced Friday morning he is entering the NFL draft. Will not play in A&M's bowl game as he recovers from offseason surgery, but did say that he will be around the program throughout bowl prep and plans to help coach the team during bowl prep. He put out a statement. I want to thank Texas A&M, the 12th man, everyone who supported me along the way. Ainias Smith, 5 seasons at Texas A&M, just had his most productive year. Career high 53 catches for 795 yards. He scored 19 touchdowns in his career with the Aggies. All right, now let's get the guys coming back to school for another year. Kentucky DB Zion Childress announced he is coming back to Lexington for a 3rd season at Kentucky. It'll be his 5th season in college football. He had 50 tackles with a sack, a forced fumble, and a couple of pass deflections this year. Now, if he comes back, that'll be a secondary. Likely will return Max Hairston as well. So good secondary there for Kentucky next year. Childress played 2 seasons at Texas State before he transferred into Kentucky. Now, over at Ole Miss, wide receiver Jordan Watkins announcing he is coming back for another year at Ole Miss. Put out a social media post, and big news. Dayton Wade announced last week he is entering the NFL draft. So Watkins coming back, Louisville transfer, looks to be, going to bring a lot of production there for Jackson Dart. Still waiting to find out what Trey Harris is going to do. The transfer from Louisiana Tech, I believe. But Jordan Watkins coming back, going to be catching passes from Jackson Dart next year. That is big for the Ole Miss Rebels. Now, let's transition to transfers coming in. Good news for Ole Miss yesterday as Illinois defensive back Taz Nicholson announced he is leaving Illinois to come play for Ole Miss. He had this past season 36 tackles, 6 pass breakups, a fumble recovery, and 2 forced fumbles. He was a starter the last 2 seasons. He will have 1 year of eligibility remaining. Now, another big one Ole Miss picked up. Chris Pooh, P-O-O-H, his nickname, Paul. Chris Paul, goes by Pooh. Former Arkansas linebacker. He announced over the weekend he is going to Ole Miss. 6'1", 233-pound linebacker, committed to Ole Miss only hours after the start of his official visit in Oxford. He was the nation's #1 rated linebacker in the transfer portal. Made 74 tackles, 2 sacks this past season, was named to the Butt Kiss Award watch list, earned freshman All-American honors and all first-team All-SEC honors in his time in Arkansas, but finishes his career at Arkansas with 6 sacks and a forced fumble. Played all 13 games last year, started the final 2 games of the season, and big-time pickup there for Pete Golding's staff. So in one weekend, they get Pooh Paul from Arkansas, and they get Taz Nicholson from Illinois, so adding to that defense. Another transfer portal coming in at Texas A&M. Kansas State defensive back Will Lee announcing he is coming to Aggie Land. Originally transferred to Kansas State from the JUCO ranks. Had 2 interceptions in his only season in Manhattan, and now he is heading to Texas A&M. Big news for the Aggies. They lose Tyreek Chappell to the transfer portal, and likely going to bring back Deuce Harmon and Tony Grimes. So Will Lee coming back, or coming from Kansas State to Texas A&M. Good get there. Over at Arkansas, they're adding to their tight end room. Sam Pittman picking up a transfer from Eastern Michigan's Andreas Paskey. He's from Denmark, 6'6", 255 pounds. Not too productive there at Eastern Michigan, but he will come in as a grad transfer. So good addition there. Over at Vanderbilt, Clark Lee picking up a portal candidate in TCU defensive back Randon Fontenette. He was the nation's number 26 ranked safety in last year's recruiting class. So see what he can do there at Vanderbilt. Over at Kentucky, of course, they picked up Brock Vandergrift, the quarterback from Georgia, last week. Now they're picking up A&M wide receiver Raymond Cottrell. Caught just 1 catch for 13 yards as a true freshman this past year, but was a 4-star prospect. So big time, guys who were once big time recruits coming to Kentucky. Got your quarterback Brock Vandergrift, and now you got a wide receiver in Raymond Cottrell. So we'll see what those guys are able to do. Over at Mississippi State, Jeff Lebby adding to his staff, making it official. They hired Coleman Hutzler from Alabama as their defensive coordinator. Also, news came out over the weekend that Matt Barnes, the defense coordinator at Memphis, is going to come in and be the program's co-DC and coach up the safeties. So we will See what that defense looks like in year one under Jeff Lebby. All right, some portal madness. Sticking with Mississippi State. These are guys that are heading out now or announced in the last couple of days. Mississippi State expected to lose running back Woody Marks. That's from 24/7 Sports. Woody Marks appeared 9 games this past year, dealt with an injury, was a four-year starter with the Bulldogs. His first start came midway through that 2020 COVID season. But this year, he showcased his skills, receiving and running the football. Even in the games he missed, when he came back, he really had an impact there and appeared last or 2 seasons ago in 12 of the 13 games there, and been outstanding. Had a career 9 touchdowns on the ground a year back. So we will see where Woody Marks ends up, but a very productive running back from Mississippi State, looking like he's on the move. Now, Mississippi State did reportedly add to their quarterback room. Baylor quarterback Blake Shapen expected to transfer in. He has thrown for 5,500 yards and 36 touchdowns in 3 seasons at Baylor. So is he going to be the starter running Jeff Lebby's offense? Certainly in competition too. We'll see what else they do in the portal and whatnot, but Blake Shapen could be the starting quarterback for Mississippi State next year. Over at Kentucky, kind of an interesting move. Freshman wide receiver Shamar Porter had entered the portal over the weekend. He removed his name from the portal and will be sticking with the Wildcats, according to Matt Zenitz. It was a big get for Mark Stoops' 2023 recruiting class. Was a 4-star player, number 6 player from the state of Tennessee, and he is reportedly coming back. So we'll see what happens with him. Over at Texas A&M, Deuce Harmon, well, he is entering the portal. So Deuce Harmon, after 3 seasons at College Station, their cornerback, Deuce Harmon making the move. He joins Jordan Gilbert and Tyreek Chappell, all heading to the portal. Harmon is the 14th Aggie to enter the portal this offseason. Over at Tennessee, it's a big loss for them suffered on Friday afternoon. Pass rusher Tyler Barron entering the portal. He had 10.5 tackles for a loss and 6 sacks this year. He tied for 11th in the SEC in sacks. He was also second on the team in that category behind James Pierce. Likely now going to become one of the most sought-after defensive transfers in the country. He has 1 more year of eligibility, but was a big-time pass rusher these last few years in the SEC. So Tyler Barron moving on. Also, Tennessee corner Danico Slaughter expected to enter the portal. He started 7 games for the Vols this year. Initially joined Tennessee as part of their 2020 recruiting class. Spent 4 seasons in Knoxville. So that he becomes the 8th Tennessee player to enter the portal this offseason. Over at LSU, defensive lineman Quincy Wiggins entering the portal. He redshirted this year, played only 9 games over the last 2 seasons for LSU, has 7 tackles in his career. Also, some depth on LSU's offensive line. Marlon Martinez, a senior backup with 1 year of eligibility remaining. He announced Friday he's entering the transfer portal. He came in for center Charles Turner when he got injured in the Missouri game, but was taken out in favor of their true freshman DJ Chester. So Marlon Martinez, over the last 4 years, played in 45 games with LSU, so he moves on. A couple more here. Auburn defensive lineman Ainias Sledge. He had entered the portal. He announced he is transferring to Illinois. Over Kentucky, D lineman Demarius Dinkins announced he is committed to Purdue. And over Florida, they've reached into the NFL ranks to hire their new defensive backs coach. Billy Napier hiring Will Harris, coming over from the Los Angeles Chargers. So interesting there. And there you have it. That's caught up on all the latest news in the transfer portal and everything else. Tons of stuff going on. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we're going to talk with Caroline Fenton, who's up there in New York covering the Heisman Trophy. That's coming your way here in just a sec. This episode presented to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with that eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your car every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're going to be burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that victory. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. It is eBay Motors. Right along here, Locked On SEC, and the SEC claims yet another Heisman Trophy on Saturday night. And joining us now, host of Locked On LSU, she is Caroline Fenton. She is up there in New York. She was at the Heisman, all the Heisman pomp and circumstance as Jayden Daniels and LSU take home another Heisman Trophy. Caroline, how are you? Welcome in.
I'm good. It was a blast of a day yesterday, long marathon of a day at the Heisman ceremony, but was really, just a bucket list item for me personally to be able to be in New York on Heisman weekend, be able to cover the event, but a little extra special that it was somebody that we know and love.
Let's rewind a little bit because it's a pretty outstanding story. Jayden Daniels, he has the career at Arizona State. He was good, not, superstar there. He comes to LSU, and it was funny at the time. I remember when he was transferring in, the whole thing was Joe Burrow had moved on. Miles Brennan had been at LSU, waited his time, and went through some injuries. And the whole thought going into 2022 was, this is Miles Brennan's time. He's a sixth-year senior. This is going to be it. And they bring in Jayden Daniels from Arizona State, and it was like, well, okay, that's weird. Like, Jayden's going to come in and back up. All right, fine. And then he ends up winning the battle. Miles Brennan retires from football because, medical issues, whatever. But it was kind of a weird thing. And then Jayden has this 22 season where he's good, and LSU has this awesome year. They win the SEC West. But the biggest gripe on him was he won't let the ball go. He won't throw the deep ball, take the deep shots. Fast forward to this year, my God, like the guy just completely did a 180 as a quarterback and became one of the best deep ball throwers, in all of college football. But take me on just kind of the last 2 years of what you saw from Jayden, because what an incredible turnaround it was for him.
As LSU fans, you never want to compare to the 2019 season because it just doesn't seem fair to compare to the 2019 season, but it's a fair comparison point of that's where we want to get back to every single season and build a program where 2019 isn't the odd one out, but it's the one of many. But I think that you can't help but compare Jayden Daniels' progression to Joe Burrow's progression from 2018 to 2019. In 2018, Joe Burrow was good, not great. Joe Burrow was just the quarterback at LSU. Joe Burrow was not Joe Burrow. And that LSU team was good. A 10-win season, went to the Fiesta Bowl, but then they turn around and have this magical season in 2019. The progression of Jayden Daniels reminds me so much of Joe Burrow because we see it on the field, and I think you also saw it up here in his brain too. Like you mentioned, Jayden Daniels, if you just watch that Florida State game in 2022, you'll see in a nutshell the issues that Jayden Daniels was having. He didn't get a lot of protection up front. That was a young offensive line that had two true freshmen on the outside. He wasn't getting a lot of protection. So his first read was run. And that was really frustrating because you can't win games in the SEC simply by having your quarterback run the football. I think in that Florida game in 2022, you started to see something click. That, Jayden was still using his legs, but he was supplementing the run game with the passing game. And then you saw him in 2022 piece together a really, really great 3-game stretch between Ole Miss, Florida, and Alabama that you started to see, I think, a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of what was to come, how much more meat truly was on the bone in Jayden Daniels' passing game. And then now you see him, he's the best deep ball thrower in college football. I mean, he has more explosive plays than any other player in college football. And it's not just because of his 20-plus yard runs. It's also because of his 20-plus yard passes. And credit to Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas and his favorite targets in the long ball passing game. But to go from a guy who we all were asking, just throw the ball. Can you please just let the ball go? Can you please just try and take a few risks? Now develop into this quarterback that's like, all right, I see you open 7 yards downfield, but I'm going to go for the 35-yard deep shot pretty much every single time is incredibly impressive. And I think that's credit to Jayden Daniels, how he's been trusting himself, how he's been putting the work in behind the scenes. And it's credit to Mike Denbrock, LSU offensive coordinator, and Joe Sloan, LSU quarterbacks coach, to facilitate kind of this growth from year 1 to year 2. It is a meteoric rise in just one calendar year.
The Heisman's such a unique award because it is a truly individual award. I mean, it's funny. I saw some of the, tweets going out there that, Jayden Daniels, and you got to talk with him and be at the media sessions over the weekend, but, he on the interior of his jacket, he had, images of himself. And then that was contrast with Michael Penix on the interior of his jacket. He put all his teammates' names, and everybody was like, oh, how selfless and all this. And I'm going, yeah, but again, this is the most individual award. If this were some kind of like team award, okay, the Michael Penix, sure. But like Jayden should be pimping Jayden. Jayden was the team. Anybody who watched LSU this year, a historically bad defense, and he had to be great every single week. And so, yes, 3 losses, but this isn't new. I mean, there's been tons of Heisman Trophy winners with 3 losses. It was just funny, though, Caroline, on the journey of the season, that Alabama game was the game that everybody was like, oh, if he has a great game here and beats Bama, he's the Heisman favorite. He lost, and it was like almost a ton of people took him out of the running, and it was like, wait a minute, his numbers were phenomenal in the Alabama game, and then he gets knocked out in the fourth quarter, but still, like, his numbers every week just got better and better and better.
And it's interesting, a lot of Washington fans or Oregon fans or the people that were pumping the tires for Michael Penix or Bo Nix to win the Heisman, the reason why they believed that Bo Nix or Michael Penix was more deserving than Jayden Daniels was because of the record. The argument, well, who has Jayden Daniels beaten? Well, Michael Penix hasn't beaten anybody. Bo Nix hasn't beaten anybody. Washington beat those teams. Oregon beat those teams because Jayden Daniels, even in LSU's losses, and maybe Florida State might be a unique situation here, but at Alabama Ole Miss games, Jayden Daniels did everything that he possibly could. Jayden Daniels can't play defense. Jayden Daniels can't tackle. And it was the defense that lost LSU those games, that had the defense. And I say this all the time on the Locked on LSU podcast. Had the defense just been bad and not historically awful, you're probably looking at an 11-1 LSU team that went to the SEC championship game and possibly had an opportunity of getting to the college football playoff. So it's an individual award, and it's not an individual season. You can't say Jayden Daniels didn't beat those teams because he did everything in his power that he could have. And look, I thought that the inside of Michael Penix's suit was really cool. I thought it was a really cool homage to his teammates. I also thought that Jayden Daniels inside of his suit was also super, super cool. I understand that it looks like team versus me. And I'm sure that Jayden Daniels looked at the inside of Michael Penix's jacket and thought, oh no, like people are going to use this against me, aren't they? One, he did say that he didn't choose the inside of it, that the people who made his suit did that kind of as a surprise to him, which I thought was really cool. And 2, I think that we can appreciate both. I think that we can appreciate the individual performance of Jayden Daniels and acknowledge that LSU is probably a 6-6 team without Jayden Daniels. With a defense like that, with how much he meant to this team, how much he did for this team, how many games he truly did win just by himself, we can acknowledge that Jayden Daniels was LSU this year. We can also acknowledge that Michael Penix did something really cool to honor his teammates on the biggest stage in college football. Doesn't always have to be a competition. Doesn't always have to be team versus me.
More with Caroline Fenton here in just a second, but this episode presented to you by our friends over at PrizePicks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way for you to play daily fantasy sports. It is just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players like pros and sharks, all that, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you'll watch the winnings roll in. And throughout basketball season, with football season still going on, they have got combo projections. You can combine the leagues. You can include 2 or more players from different sports. You can take like LeBron James in the NBA. You can take Travis Kelce in the NFL and do the more than or less than combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. They got quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types. That's what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. If you haven't checked them out yet, please go download the app. Check them out right now. Go to the website, prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege. That will get you a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use our code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. It is PrizePicks, and it is daily fantasy sports made easy. let's talk a little bit about the ceremony, because it was a little like the suspense was kind of out the window in this day and age of sports betting, and like all the FanDuel and all the sports books. They had Jayden as the overwhelming favorite after Bo Nix didn't put up a great showing in the loss in the Pac-12 title game. It was like, oh well, Jayden became the favorite. So it was one of those weird nights where like we all kind of knew. I mean, and nothing against those other guys. Michael Penix was great, and Bo Nix had an awesome season, and Marvin Harrison Jr. as well. But we kind of knew it was going to be Jayden's night. Just kind of talk about the evening, what it was like, and him winning it, and what he and Brian Kelly had to say after winning the award.
A super cool evening, and really cool to be able to learn a little bit more of the personalities of all four of the finalists. Of course, I'm most familiar with Jayden Daniels. I cover the team. But if I didn't know Jayden Daniels, I think I would have gotten a good idea for his personality, just how calm, cool, and collected he truly is. And several reporters asked him, whether it was in press conferences or smaller media scrums, "Are you nervous? How do you feel?" He was like, "No, like I'm not nervous. I never really get nervous. I'm just trying to enjoy the moment." And I think that perfectly sums up kind of who Jayden Daniels is and what his personality is. He just never gets too high and never gets too low. True West Coast vibes that Jayden Daniels has. It was interesting because you say we all kind of knew it was Jayden, and I could look at the Vegas odds and say, yeah, Vegas thinks it's going to be Jayden, but just being around media members from Washington, from Oregon, from the Pac-12 network, from Ohio State, from all over, you kind of got a mixed bag of, I think this player is most deserving. I prioritize this in the Heisman Trophy resume over this. So I thought, okay, maybe I'm just so invested in LSU propaganda that I thought it was maybe more of a runaway than it truly was. So it was interesting to hear different perspectives, and of course to hear from the finalists themselves of their path, how they felt, and how they got to this journey. It was a really, just really, really cool night.
It's also cool that one, it wasn't as much as a landslide as we thought. I mean, they said it was the closest vote since 2018, I believe, when Kyler Murray edged out Tua from Alabama. But really cool thing for the SEC, as that's now 4 of the last 5 winners from the SEC: Joe Burrow, Devontae Smith, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, of course, from USC was the lone non-SEC, and then Jayden Daniels this year. And then I think Cole Kubelik even pointed out, this is the 16th winner of the Heisman Trophy from the SEC. That breaks the tie with the Big Ten, which has produced 15 winners overall. I mean, I just think of, the SEC is now adding Texas and Oklahoma, so an even better chance at having future Heisman Trophy winners. But I want to talk a little bit about LSU specifically. Like, LSU went forever without a Heisman Trophy winner. Was it the legendary Billy Cannon, the Halloween run against Ole Miss? Like, it was this thing that was immortalized in SEC history and LSU history, but it was like LSU will never win a Heisman, trophy. They came, they had guys in the running like, Tyrann Mathieu and that sort of thing, but Joe Burrow really put this thing over the top in 19 when he won it. And we thought maybe we won't see that again at LSU. And now we talk about LSU, a program a decade ago who would have quarterbacks thrown for 80 yards a game. Now
Don't remind me, Gordy. Don't remind me.
Two times in a 5-year span, you have a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback at LSU. I mean, I got to think this is going to help Brian Kelly and LSU recruiting tremendously.
It has to, because it was 60 years between Billy Cannon and Joe Burrow. That when I was at LSU from 2015 to 2019, it was the years of, okay, if we can just complete a forward pass, maybe this team could be pretty good. Like, maybe this team could beat Alabama on a consistent basis because the defense was so good. But the quarterback play, and no disrespect to the quarterbacks of the past at LSU, but the theme at LSU was the quarterback play is just so average. You never could really get that star quarterback that could take LSU over the top. So now to have 2 quarterback Heisman Trophy winners over 5 seasons, that's so incredibly impressive. And I think it shows, and I talked about it earlier, I touched on it earlier, the meteoric rise, the rapid progression of both Joe Burrow and Jayden Daniels, I think is more telling than anything. That those 2 didn't walk into LSU as a finished product. Those 2 didn't walk into LSU as this 5-star massive household name that everybody knew and the expectation was Heisman Trophy. No. That was development that happened behind the scenes. And I think that's and across 2 different coaching staffs nonetheless. So I think that's a really, I think that's telling of the LSU football program and what you can do, what you can become at LSU. And someone asked Jayden Daniels about that last night. I believe it was Shea Dixon, and he said, "Well, why not LSU?" And I can't argue with that. Why not LSU if this is going to be the product? I think another cool thing about it, looking at it hyper specifically at this team, this coaching staff, and Brian Kelly himself. Brian Kelly's been coaching for 30 plus years. He's been in this a long time. He's coached a lot of really good teams. He's been to several college football playoffs. He's only had, other than Jayden Daniels, one other Heisman Trophy finalist, and that was Manti Te'o in 2012. He's been coaching for 30 plus years. This is his first Heisman Trophy winner, and it only took him 2 years at LSU to produce a Heisman Trophy winner. So I think whenever everyone was asking, why would Brian Kelly leave Notre Dame and the tenure that he has there to go to LSU? Well, it's players like Jayden Daniels that want to go to programs like LSU. That is the reason why Brian Kelly made that switch from Notre Dame to LSU, because you just recruit at a higher level at a program like LSU.
Last one for you, Caroline. The voting results came out. Alabama's Jalen Milroe was in there at 6, and he had 73 points. And we can't help but kind of turn the page and start to look ahead to 2024. And I saw some of the early Heisman betting odds came out, and of course Jalen Milroe is up there from Alabama.
Yeah.
Carson Beck, Georgia, he'll be in the conversation. Jackson Dart at Ole Miss, going to come back for another year, and Quinn Ewers from Texas, who we see as a chance to win a championship this postseason. He'll be an SEC quarterback next year. But if I just threw some of those names out there, who would you pin as maybe the early favorite? I'll probably go on Milroe. I mean, he was fantastic as the season went along. It's hard not to pin him. But who would be your early look ahead to next year favorite from the SEC?
I'm with you. I think it would have to be Milroe for the same reason that Jayden Daniels, made such a massive progression from year to year. Jalen Milroe made that progression in a year. Jalen Milroe looked like he was going to be replaced with the transfer portal quarterback against Texas, ultimately got benched against South Florida, and then now is leading Alabama to the college football playoff after taking down the number one team in the country that hasn't lost in a game in 2.5 years. Jalen Milroe looks like a completely different quarterback, a quarterback that could barely even complete an intermediate pass. Now it looks like he's going to be the Heisman Trophy favorite. So I think if he continues to make those progressions, and Alabama being such a young team this year, they're going to be older, more experienced next year. I think Alabama as a team is going to be better. And let's not act like being the quarterback on one of the best teams in the country doesn't help your Heisman odds. But if it's not Milroe, it's got to be Carson Beck, for the same reason that he has gotten better week over week over week, and he's going to be quarterbacking a very, very good Georgia team. So I think it's got to be one of those two.
Yeah, and as the numbers show, wins and losses don't matter as long as you're putting up phenomenal, stupid numbers. You can win this thing. She is Caroline Fenton, host of Locked on LSU from New York. She was at the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Caroline, thanks so much for the time. And I guess what? You'll be diving headfirst this week into transfer portal news and recruiting and everything else, right?
Yep, transfer portal news. I'll have a full Heisman recap on the Locked on LSU podcast, and maybe potentially some coaching changes this week. I don't know. Brian Kelly said this week would be the week of coaching evaluation. So all of that this week on Locked on LSU.
Yeah, if Matt House still has a job by the end of this week, something's gone really wrong. Because
somebody's got some questions to answer, because I know I have them, I know you have them, and I know this entire LSU fan base has them.
Yeah, Caroline, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right, that's Caroline Fenton there of Locked on LSU. Thanks so much for her time. And you can go make her your second listen. We appreciate you guys making us your first listen every day. Make Locked on LSU your second listen, or for your third listen, check out Locked on Sports Today. We now have a 24/7 sports streaming channel on YouTube with all the latest stories going on around the sports world. And you can watch us 24/7 streaming right there. So check it out, Locked on Sports Today. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked on SEC. Shout out to our everydayers. Come on back tomorrow, where we'll be recapping more news from the transfer portal and much, much more right here on Locked on SEC.